Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
A very good morning and welcome to another edition of Newsline. It's a new week, Monday morning. Welcome to your very first show for the week. Of course, your usual host, Faraz Shaukat Ali, is out for the day. I'm Sharlan Benedict and I will be sitting in for him today. Without further ado, getting to know our guest this morning, Mr. Malinda Senaviratne, civil activist, here with us to discuss the latest political issues here in Sri Lanka. Very good morning, Malinda, and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Malinda, the story that has been making headlines throughout the week, even the past couple of weeks, is actually the issue regarding the garbage that has been coming into Sri Lanka. Now, the media has been spearheading the revelation on this matter, and yesterday there were some civil activists and other noted individuals in the general public who came out and thanked the general media or the mass media here in Sri Lanka for spearheading the revelation on this, because this is quite a massive issue comparing the history that Sri Lanka has with garbage. Now, you being a civil activist and also a journalist, what's your take on this?
Well, my first post on Facebook regarding the garbage issue is that the biggest garbage container we have is the parliament.
I think you'll be undisputed on that fact.
Yeah. And but what it reveals here, Shalini, is that it's about authorities, it's about institutions and processes, procedures. One of the biggest things that's shocking is why is it that we never knew about this? Who signed this and when and why? And what are the contents of the legislation or whatever the regulations are which make it possible for people to import?
Because this garbage was brought from way back since 2014 to 2017, and it was brought under a gazette issued in the year 2013 when Mahinda Rajapaksa was, of course, the finance minister, but it has continued throughout despite the change in government.
See, you have this is the thing about agreements. You have to get into the small print, right, and see what is there and what is not there, what is possible and what is not, and what the loopholes are. Then when you know it, then you know, like the SOFA agreement and all these other agreements that are so controversial. People say it's still in discussion, nothing has been signed, but then there is something there. It's like saying the new constitution, there is no new constitution. Obviously, there is no new constitution, but it's been talked about, it's been drafted, people are discussing it. Where is the, we want to know what the document is. Now we have it. But similarly, all these agreements with the United States, we should see what the draft is. You can't just say this becomes law the moment someone sends a reply saying received. What kind of ridiculous procedure is that? But similarly, in the case of the garbage, importing and exporting garbage, processing and all that, there must be some kind of logic to it. Some of it may be defensible even. But you got to know what's in the text, and and once you can examine the text, then you know where the loopholes are and who has been and if someone has crept through them, we can find out how and why and who and so on. I mean, basic stuff. In this instance, I think we are just starting to. I mean, the media has done a great job, and thank you very much for highlighting this. And but I think we are at the beginning of this.
We are still at the initiation of this saga. This is just yet another topic. Now, Sri Lanka, we've seen change in issues. We've had a number of issues. First, we had the bond scam as this government came into power. We've had a flurry of issues that followed afterwards. Recently, we had the April 21st attacks, but now the focus has shifted.
Yeah, see, this is a typical. I mean, it's not, you can say capitalism is in crisis, but capitalism also needs crisis because it shifts. Now we are not talking about the World Cup final anymore, right? We are not talking about, as you said, the Easter Sunday attacks, and the Cardinal Malcolm Ranjit has correctly pointed, raised a very interesting question. Why is it that the US ambassador visited the accused, those were the suspects, those who are in custody, and Dr. Shafi controversial issue which is still in court. I mean, I am not saying that he is guilty, but not the victims or at least the families of the victims. So, what are the loyalties? Who are they talking about? What does human rights mean to different kinds of people? And so you move from one issue to the other. So, then the other one is like put in the back burner, and then it is like taken off the fire, and then everyone concerned they are no longer
forget about it.
yeah, they are no longer being the spotlight is not on them. Today it is the garbage issue. So, tomorrow it might be something else, and then we get the presidential election and everything is off, right?
Right.
So, this is a kind of a circus, and an informed and a public that is actually conscious of what its responsibilities are, citizenry that knows how to be citizens would not let things off the bond scam. Now, recently I saw a news report saying that the government is trying to bring down Arjun Mahendra. My take on that is that Arjun Mahendran took down the government. He is taking down the government. But why now? Why at this late moment? What are they doing all these years?
4 years.
4 years. It's a long.
He was in the
time.
country for a long time, and they allowed him to travel overseas.
Yeah, and the Prime Minister, gave him a clean bill of health and gave him a character certificate when this whole thing happened, and he defended him to the very last moment possible. So, when all these things add up, what do we get? We have a state which is they talk about the lumpen proletariat, but we have a lumpen bourgeoisie, we have lumpen nationalists, we have lumpen Marxists, we are a lumpen country. If all these things had happened in the Rajapaksa regime, during the time of the Rajapaksas, our civil society activists, those guys who tell, so-called, they would say, they said for crimes that were much, things that were not as serious as this, they said it's a failed state. Sri Lanka is a failed state. What are we now? Are we a lumpen nation? Are we a failed nation? Are we a failed
Banana
state?
Republic.
Yeah, banana republic, yeah, you can call it. And we should not be that. We can laugh about it, but it's a very serious matter. We have an economy that is really struggling, and that is not only because of the Easter Sunday attack and the potential impact on the tourism industry. It's mismanagement, incompetence, lack of innovation, no ideas, and maybe an attitude is I don't really give whatever, because I've made my bucks.
So, we have this, as you mentioned quite rightly before, the agreement with the United States, the SOFA agreement, the AXA agreement. Now, Alina B. Teplitz, the ambassador of the US to Sri Lanka, recently in an interview had tried to dull down concerns over the agreement between the US and America. According to the ambassador, the agreement is purely to reduce red tape, and she cites quite an interesting situation in the country. She cites the flood situation that was prevalent in the country and how US assisted Sri Lanka in that, and how cutting of these red tape would help, first responders to move in faster from countries like that. Do you believe that this is the real objective behind this?
Well, to several issues. One is when we had the tsunami. Now, today there is no sign of the tsunami. When Hurricane Katrina hit the United States, how did they respond? There was no red tape issue there with another country. This is their country. They couldn't sort out those issues. People are still suffering in places where they were hit. That is one issue. So, we can manage a lot of things. And the other thing is, Shalin, one good thing does not give you license
to do 100
other bad things, right? And what is this military doing here? Why do we need the military here? If there are sometimes joint exercises between the Sri Lankan and Indian military, Sri Lankan and Pakistani military, we have people go there for training, people come here to give lectures and stuff like that. That can be done. You don't need a lot of, there's no, I mean, there is obviously protocols and there's a certain amount of screening that should be done. Red tape is, I mean, you can't do away with red tape, but you know, these US ambassadors have a way of acting as though they are viceroys. And this is not, she's not the first time we had Robert Blake who was like operating like that. And you have to understand that I'm not blaming them because that's their job. You know, they have to defend American interests. If American interests include you know, creating and controlling markets or facilitating plunder, that's fine. That's what they are doing. But what are people doing? Like Teresa, I think I got the name right. Teresa Shafter. She was ambassador about 25 years ago. She said your food security lies in the wheat fields of North America, right? So yeah, she's trying to sell us wheat. So she's saying nasty things about rice and saying how great wheat is, and you know, giving all of us diabetes, right? So I don't blame this lady. I mean, that's her job. But what is the government doing? The government is supposed to be representing our interests. Are our interests being represented in this agreement? If these agreements, as I said, if it's a matter of the foreign minister acknowledging receipt of the letter to make it functional, that is ridiculous. US would never do that. China would never do that. I was recently in Geneva for the UNHRC sessions, and I saw how when ordinary civil society groups, they make their 90-second presentations. If they said anything about China or Pakistan, the representative would get up and stand. Our people don't. That's our fault, not theirs.
Now, Malinda Senaviratne, do you believe that there is enough transparency surrounding these agreements with the United States?
Well,
it was a bit of a rhetorical question that I posed.
You know, in 1994, when we, I think 1st of January 1994, when the GATT went out and we got the World Trade Organization, you know, the WTO rules came into place. Now it's like common knowledge that there were the infamous green rooms where all the representatives were, they were arm twisted or bribed. And the United States played a major role in that exercise. So transparency and the United States of America, what are you talking about?
But now the Prime Minister today in today's papers has said that he rejects the allegations made by the Bar Association regarding the connection between the SOFA, the AXA and the MCC.
Yeah. He has met the Bar Association from what I read in the papers, and he has, in fact, I think it's a positive move on his part where he has said, okay, you study the documents and give us your opinion. I haven't seen the documents. Maybe I should ask Karin.
But now the entire argument surrounding this new SOFA agreement, the argument from the side of the government, I say, is the fact that they have not as yet signed it. So it's in still a phase of negotiations, that there is no final draft.
Yeah, okay, I can understand there's no finality until there is an agreement that is signed in the proper way. But if there is a draft, why can't we see it? Why are you hiding it?
But then why are the people so skeptic about this? Is it the track record of the government? Because when it came to the Singapore-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, they were saying, no, there is no free trade agreement, there might be, there might not be, and then all of a sudden one day you wake up in the morning and you find out that the agreement has already been signed.
My advice to the government and the Prime Minister, not that I am a great person to advise, but you know, if there is a document, if there is something, I can understand you are planning certain things, you have your ideological preference, trust the people, put it before the people, let it out and see what people are saying, because in the end you are going to be kicked out of this, out of power by the people, and these are going to add to that, the secrecy. Why? Right? The track record of the government and the United States of America, you know, they have not had a stellar, fantastic history of humanity and all that nonsense. There's nothing like that. So, which is why we want to see, which is why I'm skeptical, which is why all this by the Bar Association is skeptical, and I'm hopeful that Kalinga Indathissa and his team would really go into the, I mean, they're capable, they're lawyers, they know this
Well,
stuff.
accomplished lawyers.
Yeah, yeah, accomplished lawyers, and they have the ability to go through the documents and find, notice the small print and tell us, tell the Prime Minister, sir, this can cause problems to us down the line. You don't sign agreements just because it's a convenience or because they are promising something or
Some extra cash, some extra bucks.
something. We will like take the heat off you in Geneva or New York or something. You sign things which have an impact on the generations to come. So it's a responsibility. Serious.
There was also an argument that the provisions in the agreement are vice versa. So when US troops can come into Sri Lanka and use Sri Lankan ports and other Sri Lankan resources, Sri Lankan troops too can travel to the US and other US ports. Do you believe that argument stands?
It's like saying, Sharlan, that the United Nations is an organization which is democratic, one country, one vote. Come on, we know that it's not flat like that. We know that there are powerful nations which can just
Five countries.
Yeah, that's the Security Council. But you can say, tell the representative, what would you like a job in New York? What would you like, right? Or does your country want a bridge somewhere there, or what is it that you want? You submit to, it's like a farm organization, right? A farm organization is made of farmers and everyone has a vote. But if the Mudalali is the one who is controlling, who will decide, buying the produce, giving the fertilizer, giving the pesticides, he's actually the agricultural extension officer now by default. The guy who's selling chemical poisons, right? You have to submit to his dictates. So on paper and in the boardroom, everyone has a vote. But why all of a sudden is everyone submitting to the vote of the pesticide peddler, right? It's the same thing. I mean, we are not equals. We all know that. I mean, let us not be idiots here. United States is a very powerful country. They have nuclear weapons, they bomb people, they have military bases all over the world, and they talk peace, democracy, and love for humanity. Give me a break,
So, do you believe that if by chance this agreement is in fact endorsed, much like the Singapore-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, behind closed doors, what kind of implications are we looking at?
No, see, we can't talk about the implications until we see the final document. There can be a lot that's happened. It's like the 19th Amendment. It's taken to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says these things are against the Constitution. Then a totally different, almost a different document is presented to Parliament in the middle of the night, and parliamentarians were
passed overwhelmingly
by parliamentarians who were very sleepy at that time, and now the architects are saying it's flawed. Didn't they know these flaws? They are supposed to be experts on constitutions and stuff. So like that, a lot of things can happen. They might show us a document and it might seem all fine. Then it comes out and then we find 10 years later or 3 years later or 2 years later that people are slipping through the holes and we are getting a lot of garbage. Right? Like the garbage situation. Right? We didn't know that. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, maybe I have not been alert enough. I didn't know there was a garbage import-export operation going on in Sri Lanka. The general public also didn't know until the media brought this out. When will we know? When we are, do we have to wait till some American soldier rapes a Sri Lankan girl, and and then he is shipped out based on some agreement that was signed 10 years ago?
Here at Newsfirst, we recently had quite a moving story about a foreign woman who was raped by a U.S. soldier in Japan. She spoke at the UN Security Council. So she was raped by this US soldier in Japan, and she had won her case in Japan, but however, the soldier had moved out of the country under the provisions of the SOFA agreement between the US and the Japan. But however, she had spent 10 years to find this person, and she had sued him in a US court and again won her case based on the merits of the Japanese case. And she had only asked for $1 in compensation. She said, justice cannot be measured in money.
Right. They're very brave and very determined human being, an example to us all. And you were telling me this story when you were having a chat, and I was quite inspired by this. But why should we leave room for that kind of thing? Why are there caveats that will allow people to do that kind of, to violate people's lives?
To expose Sri Lankans to such a risk.
Yes, and isn't it the responsibility of the government to make sure they are supposed to go into these things in detail? And I'm saying that they have the expertise. I'm not saying that they're all stupid. They know what they're doing. They know what they're getting into. They know what's being offered. So they have to take responsibility, and they have to trust us. They trust the people to give some kind of opinion, because we are either the beneficiaries or the victims.
Well, like it or not, the people will have their chance to give an opinion at the end of this year, and it starts to feel more and more like an election period. Especially recently, I was scrolling through a feed, my Facebook feed, and I saw a statement made by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe saying that he is going to provide gyms to all villages, a gym facility per village. It reminded me of the promise to provide free Wi-Fi to the youth of Sri Lanka and how that promise panned out.
We had bracelets
So
and chewing gum.
it feels like an election is coming up. Now it genuinely feels like there is going to be an election. There is an election coming up.
Why do we have to have gyms in every village? We have wrecked our social system. We have wrecked our local economy.
That's one of the primary concerns, the talking point now.
Yeah, but see, you're talking about a Facebook feed. A few years ago, I saw this beautiful post, Ape Achike Gym Meka, our grandmother's gym, which had the, okay, you can talk about the gender issues also, but there was the, the rolling stone, the Wangedi and the Molgaha and everything that you need, and you exercise every part of your body. People worked. People till the earth, not just women, men, women, everyone. Women more than men. That also has to be mentioned. But this whole thing about an election, okay, we must have elections. But
you see people coming out and making outlandish promises at the startup or the run-up to an election.
Yeah, years ago in 2009, when everyone was looking for a common candidate, to run against Malinda Rajapaksa, who was like on a popularity high at that time, I posted, in lighter vein, I'm the uncommon candidate. Right. And I said it as it should be said. I said this is not a api venuwen api thing. This is mama venuwen mama. This is about myself. All these things mostly about oneself and one's aspirations for oneself, not for the entire country.
For their own welfare.
Their own, how they can benefit from it. Now, I wouldn't mind being president, because I think they give a fuel allowance or something like that. I'm having trouble.
I think you'll get just way more than a fuel.
I'll be happy with the fuel allowance.
But now, speaking of an alternative to the current political establishment in the country, we saw certain people putting their name into the
hat.
Yeah, putting their name into the hat. And but recent events bring in a different light about the backstory of these people. Recently, we saw a tutor, or a maths tutor, who was involved in a massive road rage incident, and it was just crazy to just watch, and to see that this person was fielding himself as a presidential hopeful.
Yes.
And then there are also controversial details of other presidential hopefuls that have come forward. Do you believe that these people who come forward and say that they are not politically connected in this country, that they are out of the political establishment of this country, really out there, and they represent the third force of this country?
Well, you can be out of the political mainstream and you can still be a bad person. And there can be bad people who are out of the political mainstream, but that does not mean there are no good people out of the political mainstream. Now, everyone has, no one is an arahat or a saint or something. People have histories and people get over them, and they learn from their mistakes, they become mature, they become better. some become worse, you know, where people don't necessarily age the way wine does, right? No, organizations like the National People's Movement, where a lot of professionals have got together, taken the trouble to formulate documents, and they are thinking about contesting elections, they are general elections, they are thinking about fielding a candidate. What their chances are is a different, in an election is a different matter altogether, but I think that we are sick of these people. I mean, if we had a first past the post system of elections, a general election, most of these guys will be out on their, you know, sorry behinds, sorry to say. But let us also acknowledge the fact that you know, we are in a burning house, and when you are in a burning house, you are not going to put, this is what Buddha's fire sermon, you don't put your head out and say, well, is there not going to be another house for me, will I have insurance for, what about my documents, is it cold outside, is it raining, will will someone give me medicines if I fall? You get out of the house. This is a burning house. Are we going to be in, do you want to, you know, be burnt alive? I don't. I would look at very carefully and very hopefully at any outside entity that is coming forward at this moment.
But these people who are, you know, running in the forefront of this, you know, external entities, so-called, do you believe that they truly represent the general public of this country?
Do these
and
people, well, do these people represent us? That's also needs to be asked. But then you come forward, maybe let us you know, be generous and say, with the best of intentions, you bring your program, you be honest about your history, and you don't try to, you know, you can be, you show some remorse if you have done something wrong, and I'm willing to go with that. I'm willing to go with humility. I'm willing to go with anyone who can say, you know, I was not a great guy.
But at the end of the day, again, Sri Lankan voters are left with a choice between not who's good and bad, but the lesser of two evils.
Always we are all evil. We are all humanly frail. So obviously there's a lesser. But if we get to this question of the default option, which we usually kick people out of power, then how did Maitripala
elect
Sirisena
people
become
into power? True.
Yeah. So then that is our fault, not their fault.
Right. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of today's show. It's been wonderful having you here, Mr. Malinda Senaviratne, and I'm hoping that the general public too did gather some useful information from this program. Of course, we will continue to keep you up to date on the latest of political unfoldings here in our beautiful country of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for tuning in, and until next time, take care and God bless.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.